Les Ferdinand, thanks very much for doing this, mate. How did your move to Newcastle United come about?
How did the move come about? Well, I'd come to the end of the season at QPR and it had a pretty decent year where I scored 26 goals in all competitions. And I kind of got winded that Newcastle were interested. Aston Villa were the first team to make a bid. And the same as they started the ball rolling, sort of like Newcastle, jumped on board. They were the second club that came in. I spoke to Aston Villa and then I went to speak to Kevin Keegan. And once I'd spoken to him, there were a few other clubs coming, but as soon as I'd spoken to Kevin, I knew that's where I wanted to go. That was going to be my destination. So I kind of sidetracked everybody else. I'd already given Kevin my word after speaking to him that I was coming, and that was it.
What was your first impressions of Kevin?
Growing up, Kevin was someone that I watched not only in football. I watched him in Superstars. I watched him. He was the face of football when I was growing up, and I felt to myself, if I was going to leave QPR, I was going to leave QPR to go somewhere to try and better myself. Obviously, going to Newcastle and the team and squad of players that they had at the time, I realised I was going to better myself. But I thought as well to learn from someone who was a top striker himself was going to be, it was going to aid in terms of where I wanted to go as a footballer. And like I just said, when I met him, I was just in awe of who the fella was, and just the way that he came across for someone who had the career that he'd had and the reputation that he had. He was just so humble, and everything was about Newcastle United.
What was the average training session like, Les?
I mean, it was always when I went now, the trainings. I worked under Jerry Francis, who was an extremely good coach. Don Howe, who was an exceptional coach as well. But we were drilled into the way that they wanted us to play at QPR. I went to Newcastle and it was like, the ball was just moving. It was moving quicker. It was sharper. Everything was done at match tempo. And I always remember that was the one thing that Kevin insisted on, that whether you trained, whether you played in a testimonial, whether you played in a friendly, it was always done at match tempo. And we used to have fans come and watch the training. And so he never allowed you to slip for one moment in training. It was always done, to the best of your ability. And what happened then was that you just mirrored on a Saturday how you trained during the week.
Mm. Which players were you close to when you first came to the club?
I mean, it was strange. I kind of like Warren Barton, because we sort of like more or less joined at the same time. I was close to Warren. I always say when I do my dinners and talks and stuff like that, I always say that Clarkey and Steve Watson took me under their wing, and as I always say, I'm not sure it was quite the right wing to go under, but they took me under their wing, and they really looked after me. Do you know what I mean? So it was a good group of players, and like I said, Warren, because we'd both come from London and we'd both just moved up and stuff like that, he was probably the closest person I was, but we were a real close-knit group of players, and everyone got on really well, and that's the one thing that stood out for me. The camaraderie within the squad was brilliant.
You took the number 9 shirt. Were you aware of how important it was at St James's Park?
I'd always known it was a special number. And Kevin Keegan said to me, "Look, I'm giving you the number 9 shirt because I think you're good enough to carry it and to wear it, and it won't be too heavy for you." And I'd always known it was a special number, but I always say to people again, I only realised how important the shirt was when I scored on my debut. And I'd always say to people, the reason why I remember that goal more than a load of the other goals that I scored was because I just felt that if there was a roof on the stadium on that day, the roof would have come off with the noise that the supporters made once I'd scored. And then I realised, wow, this number 9 shirt is the iconic shirt at this football club.
What was Kevin like with his team talks, Les? I mean, I can imagine it wasn't much tactics. Was it more man management and just geeing you all up?
Yeah, it was. He knew his stuff, but it was never. We was always very much, the way Kevin managed and the way he was Steve, if you felt like you could take a free kick and bend it in the top corner, he'd go on then, Steve, take the corner, take the free kick and bend it in the top corner. If you felt that you was the best at taking corners and you went out and took a corner, there was no like, Rob Lee's taking the corners or this one's taking the free kicks. It was just if you felt you could do it, he never stopped anyone from doing. So it was very. His team talks were encouraging. They made you leave. I remember saying to someone, when you leave the dressing room, you feel $1 million. And someone said, well, you need to because he paid $6 for you. But, that's, you just felt uplifted. You felt, I'm going out to do battle here. And, it really got you going.
How important were the local lads? You mentioned Lee Clark, Steve Watson. I mean, we had Robbie Elliott in the team as well. We had Steve Howie, of course, yeah.
Peter Beardsley. There was some. They were vitally important. Because they helped you to understand and you got the city straight away because you know how much Newcastle United meant to all these players and what it meant to and they gave you an understanding of what it meant to the fans and so on and so forth. So yeah, they were vitally important. I always remember, I've seen down south where a young kid is doing well for himself and he's deemed to be flash because he buys himself a nice car. I always remember up there in Newcastle, the supporters were encouraging of these guys and they were so happy to see their locals, one of their own doing well for themselves. And that was one of the things that really stood out to me was how revered that the local players were to the supporters.
You talked about Peter Beardsley. I mean, he was a wonderful player, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was, mate. He was great to play with. My only disappointment is I played with Peter towards the latter end of his career. He was still exceptional, and you just think about what he could have done for you and what he did do for me as a player while I was there. And you think to yourself, if there's a player that you could play with, and in my younger days, and I've seen what he's done for virtually every centre forward that he's played with. He as you said, he was exceptional. He was a fantastic footballer.
Is he the best player you played with at Newcastle?
No, because I always say, Ginola was probably the best player I played with while I was at Newcastle. For that, unfortunately, I was only there for 2 years, Steve.
Yeah.
In that first year, I thought David was going to go on to be, European Player of the Year. He was sensational in his first season. Pete was fantastic. Rob Lee was a better footballer than I ever gave him credit for until I played with him. So, Pete was a fantastic footballer, but because I always say David Ginola was the best, player I played with domestically, it would be hard for me to say, no, Pete was the best player that I played with at Newcastle.
Alan Shearer came in, and of course, he, part of his deal, he wanted that number 9 shirt, which he'd had at Blackburn. The problem was you had it. How did KK break the news to you?
Well, he and again, I've spoken about this loads of times. He asked me the question. We were going abroad to a pre-season tour, and he pulled me in the airport before we went, and he said, "Look, I'm signing Alan Shearer today." He said, "Well, I think we're signing Alan Shearer. I think we've agreed a world record fee for him. We're hoping to get it done today." And I was like, brilliant, because I thought, if we could get another centre forward, another striker, and probably everybody was looking at us and thinking, we probably don't need another striker. We probably need a defender, if anything, because, we shipped goals towards the end of the season. But I was the opposite. I was thinking we'll just go and score more because that was our motto. And he said to me, the reason I'm telling you is because as soon as people find out that where Alan's coming here, the consensus is going to be from most of the media and everything else is that Les Ferdinand's on his way because Terry Venables famously came out and said he didn't feel like me and Alan could play together. But Keegan said, "I'm not trying to prove anybody wrong. I just believe that you two can play together, and you're going to have a successful partnership." Right, and that was great. And then he said he's asked one question, and I said, "What was that?" And he said he's asked, "Could he wear the number 9 shirt?" And Keegan said, "Look," and I said, "What did you say?" He said, "I'll ask Les." And he said, "Well, look, Alan's worn the number 9 everywhere he's been, at Blackburn, at Southampton and all that. He's worn the number 9 all his life." I said, "Yeah, well, so have I." And so it was a little bit of backing and forth. But the truth is, as he asked me the question and, as I was calculating everything that was being said at the time, I felt to myself, I've never stood on the Gallagher end and supported the fella that wore the number 9. I never stood in the Lee's end and supported the number 9 that played for Newcastle. Alan's done that, and it was a dream of his as a boy to wear the number 9 shirt. So, I never came to Newcastle and said, "I'm only coming here if I get the number 9 shirt," or anything like that. I came to play at Newcastle. It was Keegan that said to me, "I feel like you can carry this number. I think you can wear this number. I want you to be the number 9. So, it wasn't like I came here going, "Right, yeah, I have to be the number 9. But I felt the mere fact that the manager had asked me that he wanted Alan to have the number 9, and I said to him, "Look, you're the manager of this football club. If you feel like that you want Alan to wear the number 9, that's what you got to do."
Okay.
And that was it.
Couple of games, well, three games I want to talk about. So just briefly, the Charity Shield, mate. I mean, the result wasn't what we wanted. We lost 4-0 to Manchester United. But what was it like as a Newcastle player to walk out on Wembley and see all of the fans there?
Mate, it's as a player, and I've been fortunate that I played at Wembley, for England on numerous occasions. But to go out there and see, your home supporters, and it's probably the worst I've ever felt coming off a pitch, apart from sort of like not winning the league. That next season, coming off the pitch at Wembley, having been absolutely smashed by Manchester United, you just felt, oh my God. And you felt for all the supporters, because I remember they stayed till the end of the game and still clapped us off the pitch, although we'd been humiliated by Manchester United. And it was then, listen, I'd always known that the Newcastle supporters were special, but it was at that point that I realised, geez, these group of supporters are right behind us, and we've let them down badly today. And consequently, the 5-0 at home was almost like payback for them rather than for us.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, fast forward to October, Newcastle demolished Manchester United live on a TV game. I mean, it must have been a special game. Is that the best game that you played at Newcastle, do you think?
It was probably the best. It's probably the best result I've had playing at Newcastle, because of what it meant to the supporters. And I look back and I think to myself, and I always remember you talk about what was Kevin Keegan's sort of like team talks like. I always remember his team talk for that game was, "You oldies, you oldies, you oldies supporters." That's all the message was. You oldie supporters. Nothing else, nothing more. That was it. No tactics, no this one, you do this, you do this. All he said was, "You oldies."
Amazing.
And there wasn't a man in that changing room at the time that didn't believe we owed the Newcastle supporters a performance. We actually played better in the first game. Mm-hmm. The season before where we lost 1-0?
Yeah.
We actually played better in that game than we did in the 5-0.
Yeah. I mean, that was a phenomenal game. I mean, talk about that, mate. I mean, I think we must have had over 45 shots on goal that day, but we just came up against Peter Schmeichel and Eric Cantona, didn't we?
Yeah, it was one of those games and one of those days where we could still been playing today, and I don't think we would have scored. Mm-hmm. And you have those games, and obviously you don't want it to be against your biggest rivals. But you have those games where you're out there. I remember Philip Albert hitting a crossbar from a free kick, and the rebound falling to me, and then I'm putting it over the bar, and you just think, this is just not going in today. On numerous occasions, I broke through in the first half on a couple of occasions, and he just came out sprawled. you know, he didn't save them; they just hit him. Do you know what I mean? Because he just made himself big, you know. And you just think, on another day, I score a hat trick in the game. You know what I mean? It was just one of those days.
Another game that stands out is the 4-3 at Liverpool. I mean, it's voted the best game that's ever been on Sky. I guess it doesn't feel like the best game to you.
No, everyone keeps talking to me about it, saying, well, that was some game, phenomenal game. And listen, playing in it, I knew, you know, there was a lull in the game in the second half. Someone went down and the trainer came on. You know, Big Dell came on. And I always remember, you know, going over to his bag and picking up a bottle of, you know, Lucasade or whatever we had at the time. And I always remember picking it up. And as I was drinking it, I was thinking to myself, whoever's watching this game of football tonight is watching one hell of a game of football. Whoever's watching this game is watching one hell of a game of football tonight. And the noise from, you know, and I'm sorry I keep saying it again, but I speak to, you know, when people speak to me about football and they talk about football clubs and they talk about places to go and play, you know, I said I was really fortunate that I played at Newcastle because I felt they would have, you know, if not the best set supporters. The team that rivals them would be Liverpool, and to have both sets of supporters in Anfield on a midweek night, under the lights was probably one of the best games I've ever played in.
How disappointed were you when Kevin left?
Yeah, we were disappointed because we felt we were onto something. You know, we felt we wasn't far away. We really felt we were close to something. And, you know, he was the captain of the ship. And to lose the captain of your ship is always gonna set you off course. And that's exactly what happened. You know, Kevin left, you know, Kenny Dalglish came in. I'm not saying Kenny was a bad manager, but, you know, the captain of the ship that, you know, we'd all pinned our hopes and dreams on was no longer there.
Yeah.
And that changed Newcastle for that time, for that period.
Last two questions. It's an impossible one. It doesn't have an answer. But why do you think we didn't win the league, Les?
Well, yeah, again, I've spoken about this on numerous occasions, and you know, there's certain people that feel like we bottled it and this, that, and the other, and I say no. I said the reason we lost the league was when we started the season. When we started off, and start of the season, we started playing. We were playing free-flowing football that everybody was loving. Everybody, you know, I used to go back to London, and people used to go to me. I'm not a Newcastle United supporter, but let me tell you something. Whenever they're on the TV, I get home to watch them. They play some fantastic football, and our football was free flowing. You know, we just went out there and we played. You know, everyone believed in everyone. We went out there and played, and I think once we got to Christmas and just after, and everyone started to talk about us winning the league, we started to think about it. And I don't care what sport you play, the minute you start thinking about what you're doing, you cause yourself a problem. You know, you play, Steve, I don't know if you play golf, but
yeah,
if you play golf, when you play at your best, you don't even think about anything, you just play. When things start to go a little bit wrong, you start thinking, have I taken the club back in this position? Have I done this? And then all of a sudden it's all over, the game's all over. That's exactly what happened with us. We started to think about it. And then once you start thinking about it, you start to try and make things perfect, and then your reactions are a little bit slower. And that's all that happened, mate. We got caught, and instead of playing the free-flowing football that we were playing at the start of the season, it became football that we started to think about in terms of, we can't lose there, or we can't give this away, we can't do that, whereas we never thought about that before.
Obviously, you left the club. Do you think if Kevin had stayed, you might have stayed? I know it's hypothetical, but do you think if Kevin had stayed on, it might have been a bit different?
You know, listen, Kevin had said to me that the club on numerous occasions had said to him that he needed to raise money. And they needed to raise 6 million. And Kevin had said to me that he'd had offers for me. And he'd said to the club at one stage, right, if you want the 6 million, you're going to keep going on about this 6 million or what that you need to raise. We're being offered that for Les. Do you want to sell Les? And they was like, no, we're not selling Les. We are not selling Les. So I went, okay, well, let's put this to bed. And it was his way of being able to put that to bed. obviously Kenny Dalglish came in, and then they started saying to him that we need to raise 6 million, we need to raise 6 million, and then they started getting offers for me, and eventually I left. You know, perhaps if Kevin was there, you know, he might have put it to the board again. All right, do you want to sell him? And you know, I don't know. Maybe they might have said, yeah, we do. But I was, as you know, I was disappointed to go when I left. I felt like, you know, there was a lot of unfinished business for me at Newcastle. I probably had two of the best years of my career in terms of football, not in terms of goal scoring. Yes, obviously my first year, you know, I got 29 goals and the second was 21, but you know, 50 goals in 2 seasons is not a bad return, and then to be shown the door was like, yeah, I suppose it was pretty disappointing.
That's why you're called Sir Les. The best goal. I mean, you mentioned the you know, your debut goal. That sounds like your best one. Is it your best, or is there one that really stands out in a black and white shirt that you said that was my best Newcastle goal?
You know, in terms of strikes, you know, I've scored some nice headers. You know, I've scored some good goals. But my debut goal was because it always stands out to me because, like I said, it just felt, you know, the feeling that came. I mean, I scored one in the Europa League away. I'm trying to think where it was. Is it Helmstead or something like that?
Yeah, Helmstead. Yeah.
Yeah, someone flicked it up and I touched it, flicked it up and volleyed it. You know, that was probably one of the better strikes that I've hit in my career. But in terms of, you know, it's not the goal that first goal at home, St James's Park, my debut would probably be the one that stands out for me.
Les Ferdinand, thanks very much.